The views expressed on the SharePoint Pod Show by the host and their guests are their own opinions and do not represent the opinions and policies of their respective companies or Microsoft. Hi, and welcome to a special episode of the SharePoint Pod Show. This is Rob Foster, and I'm here with Dave Mann, Mirjam van Olst, and Todd Klindt. Almost forgot your name, Todd.
I'm very forgettable.
No. So I guess one of the things we wanted to do in the special episode of the Pod Show was to I guess do a show that's targeted at the Microsoft student partners and really focus the show on why you should choose a career in SharePoint and kind of why that's a good focus. And we can really target this as the impact choosing this path has had on our lives, as well as other people in the industry and kind of where it goes. And wanted to start out and kind of go around the table and let everybody give their backgrounds. But how about we go ahead and start, I guess, with Dave. Mann, how about you go ahead and give your background as to how you got into SharePoint?
All right. So, hi everybody. This is Dave. I've been doing SharePoint for quite a while now, since about 2001. I've been doing it more or less exclusively since about 2005, 2006, somewhere around there, I guess. Right around the time frame of the 2007 beta, when that was really getting kicked into high gear. But the interesting thing is that my background is not in computer science or really any technical field whatsoever. My college degree is actually in English with a minor in philosophy, which made me largely unemployable coming out of college. I ended up getting into computers really as a glorified hobby, and then making a career change about 15, 16 years ago. Did some regular .NET stuff. Actually, before .NET, did classic ASP and HTML and all that fun stuff. Moved into .NET and then moved into SharePoint, and haven't looked back since.
Awesome, great background there. So I guess Mirjam, what's your background?
When I went to college, I still wanted to become a light engineer. I was a light engineer at that point in time. And thankfully, my dad made me go to a normal technical college instead of to theater school. So I studied electrotechnical engineering, but my degree is mostly in computer science. And while I was still in school, I started my own company, sort of accidentally rolled into that. And we started out creating HTML websites, but pretty soon moved on to classic ASP sites. And I did that for a while. Until I got bored of my own solutions. And then in 2004, I applied for a job at a local Microsoft partner. And 2 months later, that was, I guess, May 2004, I started on my first SharePoint project, and I've been doing SharePoint ever since.
Cool. Well, Todd, how about you?
Well, I think I was genetically predisposed to be a nerd of some sort. I spent a lot of time stuffed in trash cans and lockers during my formative years. That was before being a nerd was cool like it is today. And so I went to school for a while for computer science, but didn't do that as well as the university liked me to. So I started doing like IT pro stuff, and I kind of stumbled into the SharePoint thing in 2001, 2002. I needed to stand up a SharePoint site for something else that I was doing, or I needed to stand up a website for something else, and I can't program and I can't do any of that stuff. So SharePoint had been on the Office CD as a free thing, SharePoint Team Services. So I stood that up, and since I was the only person in my company that had ever done it, I was immediately the SharePoint expert. And when SharePoint 2003 came out, it became my full-time job, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, and this is Rob. I have somewhat of a similar background to all you guys. I ended up starting life in college as a music major, so I somewhat had a different, I guess, liberal arts path, and then decided, I'm not going to make any money at this, so decided to change my major to computer science. And in the computer science department, we actually were doing things like we were writing compilers and doing a lot of math and a lot of stuff that I just found boring. It just bored me out of my mind. SharePoint, and that was kind of about the time. This is mid to late 1990s, and I know we're talking to student partners, so way back in the Stone Age. So, but one of the things that they had started up a few years before I got to college was the Office of Computer Information Systems, which was where I ended up setting my major, which was in the College of Business. So kind of doing that. I got out of college, started doing some ASP.NET development, started off as a developer, and then this SharePoint product came out in 2001, and I was asked to do that. And it's pretty much since I joined on to do that project, SharePoint's kind of followed me around in my career. And now I'm working more on the business side, actually here years later, at a Big Four financial services firm. So it's kind of interesting that we all landed here, and SharePoint kind of followed us around. It seems to be a common theme when I talk to people around the industry and how you got into SharePoint. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this special show for the student partners really was it's based off of a video that Dave, you posted on YouTube, and it talks about why would you want to do, it really is about starting a career or having a career in SharePoint, and some of the things we saw with, like, say, the recession and salaries and things like that. I guess to bring everybody up to speed, Dave, can you give us an overview, and we'll post a link to this YouTube cast as well. But I guess to bring everybody up to speed, can you kind of summarize your video there?
Yeah, sure. The video came about my local Microsoft office, who I work with for a lot of community things here in the Philadelphia area. They reached out to me. Somebody there reached out to me saying there was a professor at one of the local branches of Penn State that was trying to get get some interest going on a SharePoint course that he was looking at offering, and trying to get the word out to the different computer science majors that went to the school. And he was looking for some information on, why would computer science people care about this thing called SharePoint? So he reached out to the Microsoft office. They reached out to me, and really what they were looking for was I think exactly what the video covers, which is kind of a quick introduction about what is SharePoint, not to any great degree. The video is only 7 or 8 minutes long, but quick overview of what is SharePoint, a little bit about the different types of technologies that it touches upon and builds upon, some of what the current job market and the current skill sets you need are for working in SharePoint, and then a little bit of projection into the future, kind of as best as anybody's able to, about, well, what about people who might be freshmen or sophomores in college right now? What's the business world going to look like 2, 3, 4 years down the road? Where is SharePoint going to fit in? Is this going to be a skill set that they can take to market and give them a leg up on somebody who doesn't have experience with a product such as this? So that's kind of what I tried to do with the video, was talk about kind of where we've been, how I got into it, where things are right now, and then where things are going in the future, and why, as a computer science person who might be mostly interested in just sitting down and churning out code, or, as Rob alluded to, writing compilers or working with things at a really deep level like that, why would they care about a product that a lot of times it's more focused on business users than on real hardcore computer science type folks? So that's kind of what the video is about. The video is, what is the future? Why would I care about SharePoint as a computer science student in college?
Yeah. So I guess anybody want to answer from a different perspective as to why? I guess Mirjam.
Yeah, sure. Well, the major difference or a couple of the major differences between SharePoint people and .NET people, as a comparison, because it's also a Microsoft technology. Well, you can basically see it at SharePoint conferences compared to something like a TechEd conference or a more local Microsoft conference. It's a lot less nerdy. There's a lot more women in there as well. Not necessarily meaning myself, but you see a lot more women in the SharePoint space than in the general .NET space. And basically you have a lot more interaction with the business, because if you work with SharePoint, you can show something really quick as opposed to code, but you can actually show something in a web page, something that people can understand. So that makes it a lot easier to talk to the business about what you are doing. And as far as job opportunity is concerned, SharePoint is great. companies are always looking for new SharePoint people that have experience with SharePoint. And within our own company, you can always tell there's never anyone available that has decent SharePoint knowledge. Whereas, sometimes when things aren't going as well, you can see people with just .NET skills on the bench.
Well, why while we're on this subject, I mean, why is SharePoint different? I guess from a woman in technology, right? I mean, IT. We need more women to start, going into technology, and Lord knows there's not enough of them. But why is SharePoint? Why is that shift a little different? For SharePoint to where you would see something like with like an IT Pro conference or the the SQL Pass conference or something like that, to where it's majority, and I'd say large majority men. Versus SharePoint is a little, when you go to SharePoint conference or you go to a users group or, you talk to different people, around in the industry, it's a little more balanced. I mean, it's still very much, it's not very much. It's still, there's more men than women in SharePoint,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
still don't have
balanced,
to wait in line for a toilet.
Yes. Yeah. But why is it different? I mean, why is SharePoint different for women in technology?
Probably because you also have that accessibility where you can show it in a web page. It's not as technical as a .NET developer would be. Even if you're a SharePoint developer, whatever you're developing, you can see the results right away and you can show it to other people, and they will then actually understand what you're doing. Which just, it makes it a bit easier. It's a little bit softer than the die-hard the development.
Well, I would say that it can be, but as a developer, I would also say that it doesn't have to be. I think one of the reasons that there are so many different types of people, men and women. I mean, there's a lot of non-technical men in the group, and there's a lot of very technical women in the SharePoint community. But I think one of the reasons is because SharePoint is such a broad product that there's room for all kinds of people under its umbrella. There are very hardcore developers. There are some real serious architects. There are people who do strictly branding. There are people that do strictly business. So there's a lot of different roles to be filled in a SharePoint implementation or SharePoint project. And I think that attracts people of all kinds of different backgrounds, whether they're men or women.
Yep. It also makes it fun to work on a SharePoint project because you almost always work with others on it.
True.
Yeah, and I will find I almost always learn something because I'm not good at a bunch of those areas. So, I'll stand up a farm and do a bunch of stuff, and then the branding folks will come in and do something crazy, and then our business folks will come in and do something crazy with the web page, and I'm always picking stuff up, always learning stuff.
Which is cool because there's, this is one of the things I pointed out in the video. There's always something new to learn in SharePoint. Not even just when new versions of the product come out, but just it's such a big product that you learn, like Todd said, you learn something new every time you turn around. There's always something new to pick up, which is cool. As a technical person, I love that.
Yeah.
How does that play into I guess where you go with because a lot of that, I mean, a lot of this stuff you do, you're solving problems, right? For and I know most of us are consultants, and we're solving problems for businesses, and then we're learning all of this other different set of things and skills, and there's nobody out there that knows it all. For me, I mean, I see it being sometimes frustrating, right? Because you can't know it all. But then again, I mean, I think it really does add to the value that I can bring an organization by having that experience and having that broad feature set in front of me, right? That's mostly out of the box, and being able to have really creative solutions to quickly deliver a solution to a business to really make them save money and time and improve their processes and things like that. Whereas as a coder, I was kind of just writing code to solve a single specific problem. Then I'd go to the next problem and I'd write more code and and things like that. So I think for me, that's kind of a big a big thing for me, and why it has a lot of job satisfaction. Because there's always different problems to solve, but the problems you've had in the past a lot of times feed into the solutions you give to future projects.
I always said that one of the things I like about SharePoint is that it gives you a toolkit to solve problems with, that you don't need to build a security infrastructure. It's there already. I mean, once you've built a half a dozen security implementations for projects, who wants to do it again? I'd rather move on to something that's more interesting. So all the things that are kind of mundane, SharePoint gives you. It gives you an administrative interface, layout. It gives you a UI that you can work with. It gives you, gives you a way to manage content. And then you just kind of pick and choose the pieces that you need and stitch it together. Maybe with some custom code. Maybe you can just do it right just by tying together out of the box things. But it allows you to solve business problems, focusing on the things that are unique almost every time you turn around. You don't need to do the kind of mundane, boring things anymore.
That's a really good point, and a lesson that I learned, sadly, too far into my SharePoint career. When I first started doing SharePoint full time, it was with WSS 2003. And for those of you that have had the pain of using that, it was missing a lot of really obvious things. And the company that I worked for wrote a product that sat on top of it, and our developers had to write a bunch of stuff for SharePoint so that they could sell the product that sat on top of SharePoint. And I remember when SharePoint 2007 came out, a bunch of those things were rolled in, and I was talking to our developers, and I'm like, well, don't you feel bad? Microsoft, took all of the stuff that you guys have written, the recycle bin and all that kind of stuff, and they've done that. And he's like, no, that's great. He's like, now I can get back to writing the thing that I wanted to write in the first place, which was this visualization thing. And I think, like what Dave said, that's a great point. It gives you this foundation. You don't have to worry about storage or authentication or any of that kind of stuff. You get to dig right in, writing the thing that you wanted to do in the first place, because the platform is really complete.
How I guess looking at all of our careers, I mean, I think I've almost met at least one of you on 3 different continents. I think Mirjam and I've been, we've been in Europe. I think all of us have been obviously in North America together, and then I think me and Todd passed on an airplane going in and out of India one time. and I mean, how's your life better? Because I feel that I've had an opportunity to do things that I would not have ever had to do had I stayed as a coder in the .NET space.
Yeah, so I will say, without exaggeration, my experience in SharePoint has been life-changing. I mean, like you said, India, I've been to 22 countries outside of the U.S. now, and most of that has been SharePoint related stuff. Like I told you when we started this call, tomorrow morning I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to Madrid, Spain for a week to speak at TechEd Europe on SharePoint. And I've spoken about SharePoint on 4 different continents. And I mean, it's been a big thing. There's a big demand. It's a hot product. And if you want to do those kind of things, the opportunities are there. You don't have to. You can be incredibly successful without it. But the opportunities I've had have been mind-blowing.
Yeah. I would go the other way. I would say I've had the opportunity to just stay put. I mean, my life situation at this point, let me put it that way, is such that travel is really hard for me. I actually work from home at least 4 days out of the week, and I've been able to be very successful just working remotely, working on client projects, and doing so right from my house, which really, there's no way my family could exist if I couldn't do that. So it's kind of like what Todd said. If you want that, that's great. If you don't want that, it's popular enough. It's possible to do SharePoint successfully and not travel.
Yeah, and it's getting broader and broader, because if a couple of years ago, if you would meet someone new outside of the SharePoint world and they would ask, what do you do for a living? And you would say SharePoint, they would sort of look at you like, what are you talking about? But now if you say SharePoint, most of them say, oh yeah, we use that. And that's regardless of what kind of job they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that a lot too. I think most of us have SharePoint bags or jackets or whatever we. I typically have multiple SharePoint stuff. But I have a bag with the SharePoint logo on it. That's my laptop bag, and I carry it in airports and things like that. And I at least every trip, if not multiple times per trip, I get stopped by somebody who's like, hey, do you know something about SharePoint? Blah blah blah. And not in a bad way, but it's kind of there's an interesting little community out there that's that I think is also unique. I mean, it's not unique, but I think it's a little deeper than some of the other technologies that's out there. Is that most SharePoint people that I've met and dealt with, and just randomly, whether it's running into them or meeting in an airport, or just sending an email randomly to some random person that I read their blog or whatever, have been more than willing to help. And that's something that's that I found is odd, right? Because coming from the .NET world, I mean, there's still some of that out there, but there's also a lot of people that are like, hey, this is kind of what I do, and I'm not going to share it because it's a trade secret or whatever, but it's definitely a unique community scene, I guess, out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess all of us, I guess where I'm going here is all of us are involved in the community to some extent, and I guess what advantages are there for building a community? Because the show again is targeted for its initial release at the Microsoft partners, which are college students. What benefit would it be for somebody just coming out of college or still in college to get involved in the community with SharePoint?
Well, I think so. One of the things that's been crazy now is wherever I go, I know somebody there. So whether I'm traveling for work or for pleasure or whatever, I can always jump on Twitter or Facebook and say, hey, I'm going to be in Philadelphia. Do I know anybody? And of course, Dave will say he knows me, and then I will pretend I didn't see it and I will hang out with somebody cooler.
I will not respond.
Yeah. So you've got this support network wherever you're at, and SharePoint is a huge product, and as an IT guy, that's great for me because I get to touch all kinds of stuff. But when you have to fix something, nobody knows everything. So having this community around you, you've got people you can bounce questions off of that are very friendly and helpful and all that, and it just makes the rigor of keeping up with SharePoint that much more nice and friendly, I guess. It's just a better environment.
Yeah, I think I can speak to that too. It's I've actually, like you, Todd, I've actually been on 5 continents this year traveling on my job. But again, when I'm not traveling, I'm for the most part working at home, like Dave. So I've kind of got a good mix of when I'm out, I'm on the road, but when I'm not, I'm at home. But when I'm on the road, no matter where I've been in the world, whether it's Southeast Asia or it's Europe or it's South Africa or it's wherever. I mean, it's really like you said, you can put a message out there, and there's always somebody you can go meet. Because a lot of times when you get done, you basically go back to your hotel and you're very bored. Trust me, college Microsoft partners, the travel is cool, but it's not quite as glamorous as you see on TV. but I mean, there's always somebody out there to go have a meal with, or is willing to come out and meet up and whatever. So I think that's a huge deal. For those of us road warriors.
Yeah, I've had people from the community take me to the airport. I've had people from the community pick me up from the airport because I've gone someplace and not known what was going on, and jump on Twitter and ask for help. And yeah, it's been insane. So it's a good thing. And I think for the younger generation, the whole social thing is more of how they think of things. They've grown up. Facebook's always been a big deal, and so that sense of community is something they expect. And the SharePoint community is a great example of it.
How did they get started on the Twitter thing? Because I know there's special hashtags you can use and all that.
Yep.
Todd?
Well, so I don't know what you meant, but there is a specific hashtag for SharePoint help, and if anybody has a question, they just do the hash SP help, and I know a lot of SharePoint folks that have a column that are just looking for that, and when people ask questions, conversations start, and works really well.
Yeah,
I've even used it.
If you're still in college, then your local community might also be important and can really help you, especially if you don't have a job yet. Getting in contact with people from your local community. Most locations or regions have local user groups where a lot of people come together that all are interested in SharePoint, and these things are usually outside of work. So that's people that really enjoy working with SharePoint in general. And everyone there is friendly and likes to talk to each other, and either if you need help, but also, for instance, if you're looking for a job, there will be plenty of people that are more than willing to offer you a job in SharePoint if you're looking for one.
Yep. And one thing I've noticed as my career has progressed, I didn't have the best run the first time at college. Grades weren't great and all that. But the longer you work, it's more about who you know than where you went to school or what grade point you had. So this community thing has very applicable things. I haven't filled out a resume for a job in like 15 years. I haven't updated my resume forever, because every progression my career has taken is because I've known somebody at a company. We have a relationship. We know each other. We trust each other. Things open up and people progress, and this community is great for that.
There might be some teachers that want to cut this bit out, Todd.
No, I think it's a difference between kind of the beginning of your career and the end of your career. Not the end of your career, Todd. I'm not saying you're about.
Is there something I should know, Dave?
I think at the beginning of your career, it has to be. Grades do matter. What your background is does matter. But as you get further, when you're old like Todd is, they didn't have computers back when he was in college, let alone SharePoint.
And the dinosaurs would have used them all anyway. Right. They wouldn't have let us have them.
It's coming out of college, your grades are important. But I think one of the things that we want to stress with what we're talking about here is that there is more to it than grades. You have to be able to walk the walk, okay? But being able to know people and interact with people and people know who you are, well, that's going to get your foot in the door. You still need to be able to perform to get the job, but knowing people, being part of the community is going to get your foot in the door somewhere. And then the rest of it's up to you. The rest of it is, well, what's your background? What have you done? Whether that's all in college or whether you've done things on the side in addition to college, all of that is what gets you the job. But being part of the community gets you in the door.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to also, figuring out what you want to do, right? Do you want to be a developer? Do you want to be somebody that, they slide a spec under the door and you just write code, you slide some code back under the door? Or do you want to be, somebody that's in front of the business? Or do you want to build servers and farms and maintain that? There's all kinds of different things to figure out, where you want to fit. And I think there's a good opportunity to, there's many different avenues you can walk down, right? And I think that's
I would toss one other thing, kind of a tangent to that knowing SharePoint as a computer science professional, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do SharePoint, but chances are you're going to go work for a company that has SharePoint. And even if you're not, the SharePoint person or part of the people responsible for developing or maintaining or implementing SharePoint, if you're just in the IT department maintaining the Exchange server or, the other server environments or desktops, the fact that you are familiar with SharePoint is a leg up just to get you hired, even if that's not what you're doing, because it means they don't need to teach you their intranet. They don't need to teach you their internal systems because you at least have some understanding of it already. So even if you're not doing SharePoint, knowing SharePoint can help.
Yeah, and you mentioned something in your video, David, that I thought was very relevant. Is that yes, is that we had a recent market dip here, and this is very important for college students who are trying to come out of college and get a job. Is a lot of companies quit hiring. Just flat out, it's like we're not spending any money on new hires. We're cutting our budgets, and we're doing that. And this was I saw this pretty much across the board in IT. That was one of the first things that got cut, IT training, IT hiring. But I didn't really see that if you had some skills in SharePoint. Is that I think your quote was, the recession almost didn't happen for us. And
for me, I've been busier in the last 5 years than in the 5 years before that.
Yeah.
Yep. Same here. I get job offers every week. So it's the same in Europe.
Yeah. Now I will say one difference is when the recession hit, I was doing training. Among other things, consulting and training did dry up overnight.
Yeah.
There was, one day we were selling it, and then for the next 9 months, there was no desire for training at all.
Right, but Todd, you could turn around and okay, you did consulting, in addition to training, you could turn around and the consulting side of things probably picked up. I'm a consultant, and my business has been crazy.
Yeah, we kept busy.
So parts of it dried up, but other parts of it doubled.
Yeah.
So most of the in fact, I can't think of anybody I know that does SharePoint that hasn't been busy for the last 5 years.
If they haven't been busy, there's a reason.
No, it's because they didn't want to be.
Yeah.
It's because they didn't want to be as crazy. They kept things under control, which, to a certain extent, I kind of wish I had done. But, it's been busy. It's been good. But it's been busy.
Yep.
I want to talk about a sensitive topic as well, because I know it always comes up when I talk to college students and stuff. But salaries, how does salaries? You mentioned in your video a little bit, Dave. I think what'd you say the median salary for a SharePoint professional was somewhere in like 72,000.
I think it was like 74.
74,000.
Well, no, for a regular computer person. Actually, I should probably pull this up and take a look at it. But the average salary, it was like 72 or 74,000
for a SharePoint professional.
Yeah,
and which is much lower for, I guess, the regular IT professional that's coming out with just IT skill. With if you're just a C# programmer, or you're just a Windows engineer or something like that.
I just pulled up my slides here. The research I did for that video, basically the people, your SharePoint person was making roughly 30% more than your average web developer. So salaries are good.
Yeah, is that why? Because 74 is I don't hear them that low that often, to be honest. And
that's average. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's average.
Yeah, but that's an average, and that's people with it's averaging people with 6 months of experience with people with 10 or 12 years of experience. I did say in the video that I think that 72 or 74 number is low. I know people easily making 4 times that. So, it really depends on your years of experience, but just comparing averages, and this is all going to be what part of the world are you in? Yeah. Your salary is all going to be different, but just looking at averages, it's going to be about 25-30% higher than if you didn't have SharePoint on your resume.
Hey, Mirjam, do you see that in Europe as well?
Yeah, the numbers are off, but I think the percentages are the same.
Yeah, and just to give a comparison, I know like the average household income in the U.S. is just a little over 50,000. Now, obviously, we don't know very many people like that, but that's that. So a person's salary is almost 50% greater than the average household salary in the U.S. if you do SharePoint.
Yeah.
So but I will also say that. So I get that question a lot. People who do something else say, "Hey, I want to get into SharePoint because it pays really well." I think that's kind of the wrong reason to do anything.
Absolutely the wrong reason.
Absolutely.
But if it happens to be something that you like, then you will be rewarded for it, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Mirjam. I'm sorry.
Or even just, to find work. If you're working for yourself, if you're a freelancer and you're doing .NET, then you've probably had some rough times over the last few years. Whereas if you've been doing SharePoint, like we said before, you've had lots of work.
Yeah, that's I think it's very important. I think what you said, Todd, was it's critical, right? And I've known so many people that have gone, they've been .NET programmers or SQL Server people or whatever, and they said, hey, I'm going to go to SharePoint where I can get paid, and then a year later they're not doing that anymore because they absolutely hate. It's not that they hate it; it's just the role didn't fit what they actually wanted to do. They strictly went into it from a financial gain perspective, and it didn't. It really wasn't what they loved to do. And if you don't love what you're doing, it doesn't matter how long you're going to A, be bad at it, and B, you're going to burn out or get out of it very quickly,
Yep.
Yeah. If you're in college now, you're likely to have to work about 50 years at least. So you'd better do something that you like for 50 years.
That's right. Yeah. So get ready. Well, I guess does anybody have anything else that you guys think we missed or we would be important to share with these guys?
Well, I think from an IT pro standpoint...
we missed the whole... sorry, administrator.
From an IT pro standpoint, I think one of the great things about SharePoint specifically is that it touches so many other things. So you don't get bored. You're always learning stuff. Like to do my job, I can't just know SharePoint. I have to know AD. I have to know SQL. I have to know IIS. I have to be able to program a little bit because I need to know PowerShell and that kind of stuff. And so you get this wide breadth of knowledge, and you just, for me, that's fun because I'm always learning new stuff. and that's a great part. It makes it tough to be good at the job when you're starting out, but it's a great thing.
Yeah, and I think if you don't enjoy learning constantly, I mean, just IT in general, is not a career you can go into, and like you go and you learn how to do something like a trade, like you learn how to frame houses, right? And that's what you do, and you get really good at that, and you always frame houses. It's always done for the most part the same way, right? And IT is not that, and just in general.
And Google people, Rob.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think something else that's interesting to mention is the whole move to the cloud. There's a lot of stuff that's moving to the cloud, and there's SharePoint is moving to the cloud as well, at least part of it, with Office 365 and SharePoint Online. But even there, SharePoint is a key part of the whole offering that Microsoft has. So it's not going to get less important. If anything, it's probably going to get more important.
Yeah. I know you can. I was actually in Best Buy in my town here. I live right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and the Best Buy here. I'm sure Best Buy's all over the country. I'm sure here in the U.S. you can buy Office 365 subscriptions there. I was really like, wow, look at that.
kind of a tangent on that too. I mean, historically, I know people that are kind of regular .NET or ASP.NET developers, and when I talk to them, they're like, SharePoint's always, it's not the latest and greatest. It's always a step behind technically. And I think, to a certain extent that has been true in the past, but it's very definitely moving away from that. We used to always be one step behind the .NET world or two steps behind the .NET world in some cases. And that's not the case anymore. I mean, SharePoint is really moving into much more standards-based approaches to pretty much everything, whether it's, a regular .NET way of doing it or, a standards-based approach to web development. A lot of the technologies that you use in other aspects are making their way into SharePoint in a very big way. We're talking about, claims and JavaScript and web services and REST and all that fun stuff that's making its way in and becoming part of SharePoint in a way that we're not a step behind anymore. So you don't need to feel like, you're not going to be working on the latest and greatest. If that's what interests you, you can be involved in those things in the SharePoint world.
Yeah, I think something that goes really unnoticed, and I think us just kind of being focused on delivering solutions and all that is we kind of miss the point, and it's very important because I know it's very important to the millennial generation and the generation of right behind us, right? Is the whole sustainability aspect of the environment and things like that, and years and years and years of paperwork exists, and a lot of that stuff is actually being loaded into online systems, and I think SharePoint does, at least to some degree, contribute to enhancing a company, a big company or even a small company's online footprint, where they're not printing as much, they're not doing things that's wasteful to the environment, other than powering on some servers, right? Which server efficiencies are being constantly worked on to make them draw less and less power, and I think that's something I think we often gets overlooked when you're talking about this, but I think it's very important because sustainability is a big thing that we all have to pretty much think about here at this point. And I know it's very important to this generation. I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and the cloud thing does a lot for that too. The cloud makes businesses more green because there's the economies of scale of these huge data centers that can handle all that heat and all that. So small companies don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. I know. I was talking to, I can't remember who it was. I think it was somebody in Redmond, but they were talking about the actual power draw, the server boxes that the SharePoint 365 servers, are engineered to draw a certain amount of power, and they're engineered for that sustainability thing, right? So you don't just plug it in and it just sucks all the juice out of the out of the nuclear plant. You have rolling brownouts in LA or whatever. But I think they're definitely designing the cloud infrastructure for that. With that in mind, to maximize the efficiency of how this hardware runs to reduce the impact on the environment.
Yep. So I have to give a shout out. I work for Rackspace, which is a hosting company, and I know as they're rolling out new data centers, that is a huge part of how they're designing them. And and again, because because of the cloud thing, that's something that they can do. They can position a data center in a place where energy is more green and it's easier to cool and that kind of stuff. And then that's just something that people like me in Iowa don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry about having a data center where the electricity is coal or whatever. So it's a huge motivating force these days.
Yep.
Your product placement, Todd.
Did I do that slide? Was it smooth enough?
That was good. That was good.
Yeah, I do what I can. Yeah.
How does one final topic, I guess, before we get off here is the the mobile space. How is SharePoint and Office and all of that playing into the mobile space? Because many of the new college graduates, they're not going to want a lab. They're going to want a laptop, but I think that's not going to be their primary device. I think it's really moving into the smart device, tablet, phone, whether it's an iPhone, Windows Phone, Android, whatever. I think that's really, we're starting to see a shift of how information is delivered, and what does SharePoint do for that? Mirjam, would you like to take this one?
Not really.
I think it operates more, it's there. It's SharePoint. I mean, I browse my Office 365 site on my tablet, on my phone, or from my laptop, whatever device I happen to be on. But I think a lot of it is, not that it's not SharePoint, but a lot of it is more Office, that I'm interacting with my documents on whatever device I happen to be on, and in the background they're getting stored back into SharePoint, but I'm not necessarily browsing SharePoint per se. And I think that's going to be a space that's going to be really interesting over the next couple of years, as the whole mindset of an app running on my phone or my tablet, I don't necessarily know nor care what it's interacting with out on the cloud. And you can't see me doing my little air quotes, but there's something out there in the ether that is storing my information that I'm interacting with, but my interface to it is this tiny little 4x2 or 4x3 screen, or something like that. So not that it's not SharePoint, but it's just that SharePoint kind of fades into the background a little bit from a user's point of view, because they're interacting with an app on that device.
Yeah. Dave mentioned earlier how SharePoint has this reputation of always being one revision behind. And I know with SharePoint 2007 and SharePoint 2010, we were all frustrated because SharePoint missed the boat on this mobile stuff. SharePoint 2007 had this ridiculous /M thing where it would give you an unusable view for mobile stuff. But by the time that came out, the iPhone came out in 2007, and you had these great web browsers. And then 2010 came out, and it didn't quite hit it there either, but it was closer. With 2013 now, SharePoint's caught up, I guess. We've got this whole device channel stuff, and so it's not. It used to kind of stink, but I think the SharePoint team's figured it out. So, like Dave said, it's not going to be a thing anymore. It's just going to be another place you go.
Yeah, I think with. Oh, go ahead, Mirjam. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And if you're building your own apps with all the REST stuff in SharePoint, all the ways that you have now to connect to all your data, the fact that the client object models basically now expose most of what you can do in SharePoint, it becomes a lot easier to build your own application and showing or using data from SharePoint without actually going into SharePoint. Like my favorite app showing SharePoint data is the mobile app for our Dutch user group that I run. So that was created by one of the guys from the community from Mavention, and they did a great job on it. So when I'm now, on my way to a community event, I can just load up the app and I have all the information in there without going into SharePoint. It's just in the app.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a key for the next gen of apps that we see coming out with SharePoint 2013, and it really is around the cloud mashups of pulling data in from, like with SharePoint 2013, there's this concept called the news feed, and you can follow things like people or documents or sites or anything in there. And as we start to see the convergence of some cloud services like Yammer, which is a cloud service that is currently kind of being rolled into the SharePoint stack. I think that whole mobile space is going to be, very critical into the integration point of that, to where, as you're following things and things start showing up in your news feed, all of that kind of ties in together, and you pull data from Yammer, you're getting data from this document as people are revising it, and, different search results, and there's all kinds of different, possibilities that's going to make that mobile experience, I think it's just going to be the experience, or the go-to place, to where, SharePoint could become, like the secondary. I guess the SharePoint as we know today it could become the secondary landing location for getting information only when you need to, because it could be delivered in such a way that you could, have everything on your mobile phone and not have to, there's obviously you're not going to be writing Word documents and things like that, but from a metrics checking or things like that, there's all kinds of different possibilities that I think we're starting to see happen at this point.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting over the next couple of years, how that landscape evolves, because a lot of people looking at apps right now, a lot of people look at them and say, yeah, that's great, I'm not really sure what to do with them. Well, I see a lot of potential there, but it's going to take people need to adjust a little bit. Let me rephrase that. The business world needs to adjust a little bit. The business world needs more of the people who, that is their expectation, that's how they interact with these things. It's not some great big monolithic thing that they log into SharePoint and then do their work. It's this, this point of contact where I do this and it's in this app and this is in this app. And I think that's going to be really good for the SharePoint space. I'm really kind of excited that the app model exists, not necessarily the way it is right now. I think it needs some work, but it's where it's going.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
And I wanted to bring this up as a topic because I know we have a lot of, hopefully a lot of college students will hear this, and these are the next gen of people that are going to be starting businesses, right? And some of them might go work for companies, some of them might start their own business, and this is definitely an opportunity area for you to focus on. I think it's a very important thing to consider if you're thinking about jumping out there. And don't be afraid to jump out there if you've got an idea. That's how some of the largest companies in the world got started. Apple and Microsoft and Google and all of these companies started on in a college dorm room essentially. So a lot of this
garage space I could rent out if anybody's looking for to start in a garage.
Yeah, fee increases with revenue, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that's important to share with where we think it's going and where we see it going from a business perspective, because that's definitely a focus area that you're going to see in the next probably 1 to 5 years. Really uptaking.
Enough, I think that the technology in SharePoint now is a little ahead on the app model, at least. I think it's a little ahead of where the businesses are. Businesses aren't ready for that right now, but like you said, Rob, 1 to 5 years, I think it's going to change, and the app model is going to be there and say, I've got a little evolving to do, but I'm ready for you.
Yep.
It's not going to be I don't think it's going to be playing catch up.
Okay, guys. Well, I want to go ahead and wrap up. I know we've been going here for quite some time, but let's give everybody one more round to go around. Anything we missed. Anybody want to conclude with anything? And let's start with Todd. Todd, do you have anything?
A little bit, I guess. One thing I would say, I kind of touched on this before, follow your passion, follow what you like, and if SharePoint ends up being it, you can't go wrong. And there's a little something for everybody. If you want to be cool and well-respected, you could be an admin like me. If you, not up on the personal hygiene thing, you can be a developer like Dave. So there's, and if you want to make things pretty, you can be business use. So there's a lot of different avenues for it. It's a great product to work on. It's a great community to be a part of. So I recommend it to anybody to at least give it a look, see if you like it.
Mirjam.
Yeah, I actually agree with Todd. It's a really broad field in which you can work. I personally really like it. There's a lot of great people that work in SharePoint, so it's always fun to work with SharePoint, even when it's frustrating, but it's great to work in teams and solve problems together. great job opportunities in there, and also a great way to make a career. You can start off when before you know a lot about SharePoint, just working on the business side, configuring things in SharePoint, helping people setting up their sites, and then either grow into the developer direction or the IT pro direction, right until, if you are interested in that, project managers or line managers, still all involved with SharePoint.
Dave?
Well, first I just want to say, like a typical admin IT pro type, Todd wasn't thinking ahead there. He was not planning for the future. He went and insulted me when I was going to get a chance to speak after him.
Rookie mistake. Rookie mistake.
No, I would just say, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I hung my hat on SharePoint a long time ago, and it's been nothing but good since then. And it's not showing any signs of slowing down. SharePoint's wildly popular, and businesses don't turn on a dime. Is SharePoint always going to be this popular? No. It's gonna slow down, but it's going to be a long time coming before before SharePoint goes away. I don't see that happening. Businesses don't turn on a dime. So if you're worried about, well, it's so popular now, is it still going to be popular 4 years from now when I graduate from school? The answer is yes. It's got too much of a head of steam for it to go away anytime soon. It's going to evolve. It's going to change. It has to. Technology changes too fast, but it's not going to just up and go away just because.
Yeah.
So I hung my hat on it a long time ago. I don't see me getting out of this space anytime soon.
Yep. Well, I would, I know we've got a lot of people, like I said, hopefully that's listening to this, that's in college, getting ready to start their career. And, I always tell my, I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old at this point. And, no matter where you end up in the world and in the career, whether it's in SharePoint or not, it sounds like you're at least focusing on a career in IT. All I've got to say is, never quit dreaming and never really stop that creative thing that you've got going right now, as a young influential coming into the market, because there's opportunity. The industry is always changing. It's changing for the better, and it's definitely one of the most exciting times to ever enter the IT world. So best of luck to everybody that's listening, and I do appreciate everybody that was on the panel today, and for you guys, I know we actually met because of SharePoint, so I know I will see you guys. I'm also headed to Europe tomorrow, not the same location as Todd, but I'm headed that way, and but for you guys that are going traveling, have a safe flight to Madrid, and Dave, enjoy hanging out at home.
Absolutely, I do.
Well, thanks, guys. Much appreciated, and we will call this a wrap.
See you guys.
See you guys.
See ya. Thanks.